The elevator stopped between floors with a sound I'd never forget, a sharp metallic clunk, followed by silence so sudden it felt loud. For half a second, neither of us reacted. The lights flickered once, steadied, and then the air settled into that weird, enclosed stillness you only notice when you realize you're not moving anymore. Maxwell said slowly, looking up at the floor indicator. That's not supposed to happen. I let out a short laugh, mostly to keep myself from swearing. Tell me this is one of those dramatic pauses before it keeps going. He pressed the button panel. Nothing. Tried again, harder this time. Still nothing. The elevator didn't budge. Great. It was just the two of us. Me, Theodore, and Maxwell, stuck somewhere between the 7th and 8th floor of my apartment building. I'd seen him a dozen times before, always in passing. A nod in the hallway, a quick hey near the mailboxes. Nothing more than that. Now we were standing less than 3 feet apart on a box of steel and stale air. Maxwell exhaled and ran a hand through his dark hair. Okay, not ideal. But elevators get stuck all the time, right? They'll fix it. How long is fix it? I asked. He shrugged. Minutes, an hour, worst case, a few. I stared at him. You say that way too casually. He smiled, not cocky, not nervous, just easy. I'm choosing optimism. I reached for the emergency button and pressed it. A crackle. Then a bored voice answered, confirming what we already knew. Yes, the elevator was stuck. Yes, help was on the way. No, they couldn't give an exact time. A few hours, maybe, the voice said, like they were telling me the weather. A few hours. When the call ended, the silence returned, thicker this time. Maxwell leaned back against the wall, arms loosely crossed. Well, looks like we're roommates now, I huffed. Guess so. Up close, it was impossible not to notice him. He was taller than I had realized, broad shoulders stretching the fabric of his hoodie, jaw dusted with stubble like he hadn't shaved in a day or two. There was something relaxed about him, like he was comfortable taking up space, even in a stalled elevator. I, on the other hand, felt painfully aware of every inch of myself, so he said after a moment, glancing at me, I'm Maxwell, in case this becomes a whole survival situation and we need to know each other's names. Theodore, I replied. But if we start rationing oxygen, I'm panicking. That got a laugh out of him. A real one. Warm. It echoed softly off the metal walls. Deal, he said. If you panic, I'll pretend to be calm. If I panic, you lie and say everything's fine. Wow, we're really planning ahead. We settled into a tentative rhythm after that. Small talk at first. Where we lived. Which floor? How neither of us had expected our Tuesday evening to include being trapped in a vertical coffin. Minutes stretched. Then more. The air grew warmer. Not unbearable, just enough to make me loosen my jacket and roll my sleeves up. Maxwell noticed, did the same, and suddenly the space felt even smaller. At one point, the elevator gave a tiny shudder. I drew in a breath before I could stop myself. Maxwell caught it. Hey, he said gently. Still good, that's normal. Probably, is not comforting. I muttered. He tilted his head, studying me for a second. You don't like enclosed spaces? Not when they stop doing what they're designed to do. Fair. Another stretch of silence passed, but this one felt different, less awkward, more aware. I could hear his breathing. He could probably hear mine. Every movement felt amplified, every glance charged in a way I didn't quite understand yet. So, he said eventually, quieter now. Since we've got time, want to tell me something random about you? I raised an eyebrow. Is this your way of distracting me? Absolutely. I thought about it, then shrugged. Okay, random fact. I always take the stairs when I'm going down. Elevators only on the way up. He smiled. That's ironic. Don't start. He laughed again, softer this time, and something about the sound settled into my chest. I didn't know it yet, but those hours in that elevator were already shifting something between us, something that wouldn't stay trapped there when the doors finally opened, and we were only just getting started. Time does something strange when you're stuck. It stretches, folds in on itself, then suddenly jumps forward without warning. 10 minutes felt like 30. Then an hour passed in what felt like a blink. Maxwell checked his phone for what had to be the 10th time and sighed. No signal. Of course, mine either, I said, pocketing it. Figures. We'd both shifted from standing to sitting on the floor at some point, backs against opposite walls, legs stretched out in front of us. The elevator wasn't huge to begin with, and sitting made it feel even smaller, more intimate in a way I was trying not to think too hard about. The hum of the building ran faintly through the walls. Somewhere far above us, people were probably going about their evening, completely unaware we were sealed in here like a poorly planned social experiment. You live alone? Maxwell asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. Yeah, you? Roommate, nice guy, loud, loves blender smoothies at midnight. I smiled. That should be illegal, right? I've considered murder. We fell into another easy stretch of conversation after that. Work, mostly. He was in marketing, which he admitted meant talking in circles and making PowerPoints that could have been emails. I worked in IT, which I described as fixing the same problem over and over while people swear they didn't click anything. At least you're honest, he said. I try. At some point, the heat became more noticeable. The air felt heavier, thicker. Maxwell pulled his hoodie over his head and tossed it aside, leaving him in a fitted t-shirt that did absolutely nothing to help my concentration. I blamed the elevator. Definitely the elevator. Getting warm in here, he said, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. Yeah, I replied, probably too quickly. They said the ventilation should still be running, but it's not winning any awards. He finished. Our knees brushed when he shifted position. It was accidental. Obviously. Still, neither of us moved right away. I became acutely aware of the contact. Warm denim against my leg, the subtle tension of his muscles as he realized it too. My instinct was to pull back, apologize, make it awkward. Instead, he glanced down, then up at me, expression unreadable but calm. You okay? He asked. Yeah. You? Yeah. The contact remained. Something unspoken hovered between us then, delicate and electric. Not rushed, not forced, just present. I broke eye contact first, heart doing something annoyingly dramatic in my chest. So, how long do you think before they get us out? He checked his watch. We're coming up on 2 hours. 2 hours, I repeated. Wow. Could be worse, he said lightly. At least I'm not stuck with someone who chews loudly. I laughed. Low bar, but I'll take it. Another small tremor ran through the elevator. This one was stronger. The lights flickered, dimmed for a half second, then steadied again. My breath hitched before I could stop it. Maxwell noticed immediately. He shifted closer, deliberately this time, our shoulders touching now. Hey, still okay. That felt like a test run. A test run for what? I asked. For moving again, he said, hopeful. Or for dropping, I muttered. He nudged my shoulder gently. If that happens, I promise to scream with you. That's comforting? Team effort. The closeness felt natural in a way that surprised me. I could smell his cologne. Something clean, subtle, soap and something warmer underneath. He wasn't invading my space. He was sharing it. After a moment, he spoke again, voice lower now. Can I ask you something kind of personal? I hesitated. Depends how personal. He smiled faintly. Fair. You don't have to answer. Okay. Ask. He took a breath, eyes flicking to our still touching shoulders, before meeting mine again. Are you seeing anyone? The question landed softly, but it landed. No, I said after a beat. You? He shook his head. No. Neither of us added anything else. We didn't need to. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged, humming just under the surface, like the electricity powering the lights above us. Somewhere outside the elevator, a faint mechanical noise echoed through the shaft. Distant voices. Movement. Maxwell's face lit up. You hear that? Yeah, I said, hope rising despite myself. He grinned at me then, wide and genuine, and for a strange, fleeting second, part of me felt disappointed. Because whatever was happening between us in this stalled box, whatever fragile thing was forming, I wasn't ready for it to end just yet. The voices outside faded again, replaced by the low, steady hum of nothing happening. Maxwell's grin slowly slipped into something more neutral. Or maybe not. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Guess we're still residents of elevator purgatory. He chuckled, then leaned his head back against the wall. Our shoulders were still touching. Neither of us mentioned it. At this point, it felt intentional. Not a mistake to correct, just a fact of the situation. A few minutes passed like that. Quiet, but not uncomfortable. My thoughts, on the other hand, were anything but calm. There was something about being stuck that stripped things down. No distractions, no polite exits. Just two people, close enough to notice each other's breathing patterns, the way their postures shifted when they relaxed. Maxwell broke the silence again. "Can I admit something?" I turned my head slightly to look at him. "You're on a roll." He hesitated, just a fraction. When the elevator first stopped, I was kind of annoyed. Only kind of? Okay, very, he admitted. I had a long day. All I wanted was to get home, eat something unhealthy, and shut my brain off. "And now?" I asked. He glanced at me, then away, then back again. "Now, I'm glad it stopped." My stomach flipped. Yeah. There was no big declaration in his voice, no dramatic pause, just honesty, laid out plainly. I swallowed. "Me too." That seemed to surprise him. His eyebrows lifted slightly. "Really?" "Yeah," I said, feeling my face warm. "I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd like to leave eventually, but this isn't the worst way I've ever spent an evening." His smile this time was slower, softer, more deliberate. The elevator shifted again, a gentle sway that sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. Without thinking, I reached out, just instinct, and my hand brushed his forearm. I froze. "So, sorry," I started, already pulling back. "It's okay," he said quickly. My hand stopped midair. "It really is," he added, his voice steady. He looked down at my hand, then back up at me. "You can keep it there, if you want." I did. His arm was warm beneath my fingers, solid. The contact sent a quiet rush through me, the kind that starts in your chest and settles somewhere deeper. He didn't move away. If anything, he shifted slightly closer, like he was meeting me halfway. Neither of us spoke for a while after that. I became aware of how close our faces were now if one of us leaned in. Too aware. My pulse felt loud in my ears, like it might give us away. "You know," Maxwell said eventually, voice low, almost thoughtful, "this is the first time I've actually talked to someone in this building." I smiled faintly. "Same. We're all very good at pretending we don't exist." "Yeah," he said, "but you're easy to talk to." I met his eyes. "You too." Another pause. This one heavier, more deliberate. "Can I ask you something else?" he said. I nodded. "Back there." He gestured vaguely with his free hand. "When I asked if you were seeing anyone." I wasn't just making conversation. My heart skipped. "I figured." "Good," he said quietly, because I was kind of hoping the answer would be no. I laughed softly, more nervous than amused. "You're pretty bold for someone trapped in an elevator." He smiled. "What are you gonna do? Walk away?" Fair point. The elevator lights flickered again, longer this time. The hum dipped, then returned. We both glanced up, then back at each other. "If this thing suddenly starts moving," I said, "this is gonna get very awkward very fast." "Yeah," he agreed. But until then, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to, because in that moment, stuck between floors, time stretched thin, my hand still resting on his arm, it felt like we were choosing something, not rushing it, just acknowledging it. And whatever happened when those doors finally opened, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't something I was going to forget the moment we stepped out. We stayed like that longer than I expected. Close, quiet, suspended in a moment that felt oddly fragile. My hand was still on his arm, fingers relaxed now, like they'd always belonged there. Maxwell didn't move away. If anything, his posture softened, his shoulder leaning more fully into mine. I was the first to pull in a slow breath. So, if this elevator never moves again, do you think people will assume we were friends? He smiled without looking at me. Friends feels like underselling it. I glanced at him. Oh? He turned his head then, our faces closer than they'd been all night. I don't usually get like this with strangers. Me neither, I admitted. The word strangers felt wrong now. Too distant for what was happening in a space this small. Another faint noise echoed through the shaft. Metal on metal. Distant, but real this time. We both stiffened. Maxwell straightened slightly, though his arm stayed where it was. Okay, that sounded more promising. Don't jinx it, I said. Right, sorry. The noise faded again, leaving behind an almost awkward quiet. Not uncomfortable, just uncertain. Like we were both wondering what to do with our hands, our words, ourselves. Maxwell cleared his throat. Can I be honest again? I smiled. You're on a streak. He looked at me, really looked at me, like he was deciding something. Part of me hopes they don't open the doors for a bit. My heart did that thing again. Yeah? Yeah, he said. Because once they do, real life comes rushing back. Schedules. Awkward hallway nods. Pretending this didn't happen. I nodded slowly. I was thinking the same thing. Silence settled between us again, heavier now, but not in a bad way. It felt like standing at the edge of something. Not falling, not backing away. Just waiting. The elevator shifted suddenly, more than before. I gasped, my grip tightening on his arm without thinking. Maxwell reacted instantly, his hand coming up to my wrist, steadying me. Hey, he said softly. I've got you. The elevator didn't drop. It didn't rise. It just settled, like it had taken a breath with us. We both laughed, a little breathless. Okay, I said. That one got me. Me too, he admitted, though his hand didn't move away. His thumb rested lightly against my skin, not rubbing, not pressing, just there. I became intensely aware of the contact, his hand on my wrist, my hand on his arm. The way our knees were almost touching now, neither of us pulled back. Maxwell, I said quietly, surprising myself by saying his name out loud like that. Yeah? If we get out of here, I continued, and this turns into hallway nods like you said, I think I'd be disappointed. He smiled, slow and sincere. Then let's not let it. How? I asked. Well, he said, eyes flicking briefly to my lips before meeting my gaze again, we could start by not pretending this is just the elevator. The implication hung between us. Not rushed, not forced, just honest. Before either of us could say more, a loud mechanical clank echoed above us, followed by the unmistakable sound of something engaging. Gears, cables, movement. The elevator jerked. This time, it was different. Maxwell's hand tightened slightly around my wrist as the car began to rise. Slow and uneven, but definitely moving. Looks like reality's back, he said softly. I swallowed, torn between relief. Yeah. But as the elevator climbed, as the floor numbers finally began to change, I realized something important. Whatever this was between us, it didn't feel finished. It felt like it was just about to begin. The elevator crawled upward like it was doing us a favor rather than its job. Every small jolt made my stomach tense, but Maxwell stayed steady beside me, his hand only leaving my wrist once the movement smoothed out. We both stood as the car leveled itself, instinctively brushing off our clothes like we were preparing to re-enter the world. The lights brightened. The hum changed pitch. Normal sounds, finally. And suddenly we were very aware of how close we were standing. The elevator slowed, then stopped with a final definitive thunk. The doors didn't open right away. We looked at each other. Of course, I muttered. Maxwell laughed under his breath. Did you expect a clean ending? Another second passed. Then another. In that brief pause, something unspoken settled between us. An understanding, maybe. That whatever happened once those doors slid open, we didn't want to lose the thread of what had formed in here. Finally, with a soft hydraulic sigh, the doors parted. Bright hallway lights spilled in, washing over us. Voices echoed somewhere down the corridor. Life. Resuming like nothing had happened. A couple stood waiting outside, relief written all over their faces. "You guys okay?" the man asked. "Yeah," Maxwell answered easily. "All good." We stepped out together, shoulder to shoulder, the elevator doors closing behind us like punctuation. For a moment, we just stood there, neither of us moving toward our respective directions. 7th floor, my floor. "Well," I said, breaking the silence, "guess this is where the story splits." "Doesn't have to," Maxwell replied. I looked at him. Really looked this time, without flickering lights or metal walls or the excuse of being trapped. Just him, standing in my hallway, hands in his pockets like he belonged there. "You live?" I gestured vaguely. "8th floor," he said. "One more flight up?" "Stairs?" I teased. He smirked, normally. "Tonight, I'm feeling rebellious." I hesitated for half a second. The old instinct to keep things simple, safe, unremarkable. Then I ignored it. "I was about to make dinner," I said. "Nothing fancy. Probably something embarrassingly lazy." Maxwell's expression softened, then warmed. "That sounds perfect." Yeah. We started walking down the hall together. The rhythm, easy, familiar, in a way that surprised me. When we reached my door, I unlocked it and stepped aside. "Welcome back to reality," I said. He glanced at the elevator, at the end of the hall, then back at me. Honestly, I liked the in-between better. I smiled. Me too. But as he stepped inside, I realized the truth. We hadn't left that in-between space behind. We'd brought it with us. Inside my apartment, things felt quieter than usual. Not awkward, just attentive, like the walls were listening. Maxwell glanced around as I kicked my shoes off. "Nice place." "Thanks," I said. "It looks better when it hasn't just trapped me in an elevator for half the evening." He smiled and set his keys on the counter. Casual, comfortable. Too comfortable for someone who'd technically been a stranger a few hours ago. I headed to the kitchen, partly to give my hands something to do. I was serious about the lazy dinner. "You okay with pasta?" "After today, I'd eat anything," he said, leaning against the doorway. I think I burned through all my expectations back in that elevator. I laughed, filling a pot with water. Same. As I moved around the kitchen, I felt his presence behind me, not hovering, not crowding. Just there, watching in a way that wasn't judgmental, just curious. Like he was already learning the small things about me. How I filled the pot too full every time. How I checked my phone even though I knew there were no messages waiting. "Can I help?" he asked. "Sure," I said, handing him a knife. "You can chop. Just don't judge my lack of culinary ambition." He took it, bumping my shoulder lightly as he passed. No judgment. I respect honesty. We worked side by side, the space between us shrinking and expanding naturally as we moved. Our arms brushed, fingers grazed. Each time, there was a tiny pause, like we were both deciding whether to acknowledge it. At one point, he reached for the same drawer I was opening. Our hands collided gently. "Sorry," we said at the same time. We both laughed. He didn't pull his hand away right away. Neither did I. "You know," he said, quieter now, "this still feels a little unreal." I nodded, "Like we're borrowing time." "Yeah," he said. "Like the elevator just delayed us long enough to notice each other." I met his eyes. The kitchen light caught them just right. Warm, steady, not rushed. Not uncertain. Dinner finished cooking, but neither of us seemed in a hurry to sit down. We leaned against the counter, plates forgotten for a moment, the conversation slowing into something softer. "I'm glad it was you," I said before I could overthink it. He smiled, something genuine and a little vulnerable flickering across his face. Me too. Eventually, we did sit. We ate, talked, laughed about stupid things, the building's weird noises, bad dates, the unspoken rule of pretending neighbors don't exist until something goes wrong. Hours slipped by unnoticed. When the evening finally began to wind down, Maxwell glanced at the time and sighed. I should probably head up before my roommate assumes I fell down the elevator shaft. Probably, I said, though part of me resisted the idea. At the door, he hesitated, hand resting on the knob. Hey, Theodore? Yeah? I don't want this to turn into those hallway nods we talked about. Neither do I. He smiled, relieved. Good. Then, without making it a big deal, without ceremony, he leaned in and pressed a gentle kiss to my cheek. Brief, warm, intentional. I'll see you soon, he said softly. Yeah, I replied, my voice quieter than I expected. You will. When the door closed behind him, the apartment felt different. Not empty, just changed. And for the first time all night, I wasn't thinking about how we'd gotten stuck. I was thinking about how we'd finally started moving. The next morning, I took the stairs. Not because I suddenly distrusted elevators, okay, maybe a little, but mostly because I didn't trust myself not to overthink everything if I stood in that metal box again. The quiet, the memories, the way one unexpected stop had rearranged my sense of normal. I was halfway down to the 6th floor when I heard footsteps coming up. Wow, a familiar voice said. You too? I looked up. Maxwell stood there a few steps below me, one hand on the railing, coffee cup in the other. He looked different in daylight, less elevator shadowed, more real. Still him, though. Still that easy presence. I smiled before I could stop myself. Guess I'm committing to the lifestyle now. Stare people, he said. Bold choice. We fell into step together without discussing it, matching pace like it was the most natural thing in the world. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. So, he said eventually, glancing over at me, last night wasn't weird, right? I shook my head. No, it was surprisingly not. Good, he said, relief clear in his voice, because I kept replaying it, wondering if I imagined half of it. You didn't, I said. I was there. He smiled at that. At the bottom of the stairs, we stopped. Morning light filtered in through the lobby windows. People passed by, absorbed in their routines, unaware they were walking through the aftermath of something quietly important. I'm heading to work, he said. But maybe dinner, I said, cutting in gently. This time on purpose, he grinned. I was going to say coffee, but I like your ambition. Coffee first, I amended. Then dinner. Deal. We stood there for a beat too long, both smiling, neither in a rush to go. Finally, he lifted his cup slightly in a half salute. See you tonight, Theodore. See you, I said. As he walked out, I realized something that made me pause. The elevator hadn't just trapped us. It had slowed us down long enough to notice the person we might have walked past forever. And sometimes, apparently, that's all it takes. Dinner turned into a routine faster than I expected. Not immediately, not in some montage way, but naturally. Coffee first, like we'd agreed. Then takeout one night, something half-burned, and homemade the next. Sometimes at my place, sometimes upstairs at his. We learned each other's spaces the way you learn a person's habits, slowly, without trying to memorize them. Maxwell liked music on while he cooked. I liked silence until the food was actually on the table. He left cabinet doors open. I forgot where I put my phone even when it was in my hand. None of it felt like compromise, just discovery. A week after the elevator, we rode it together for the first time. We stood side by side, close but not touching, both pretending not to notice how aware we were of the space. The doors slid shut. The car started moving. I glanced at the floor numbers, half expecting them to stall again. They didn't. Maxwell caught my look and smiled. You okay? Yeah, I said, just remembering. Me too. The elevator carried us up smoothly, uneventfully. No flickering lights, no sudden stops. Just a quiet rise. When it reached his floor, the doors opened. He didn't step out right away. Instead, he turned toward me, eyes searching my face like he was checking something important. "You know," he said, "if that elevator hadn't broken, we probably wouldn't be here." I finished. "Yeah." He reached out then, tentative but sure, and took my hand. Not hidden, not rushed, just honest. "I'm glad it did," he said. "So am I." The doors started to close. He stepped out just in time, still smiling at me as they slid shut between USAs. The elevator continued upward. I realized something else. The story wasn't really about being stuck. It was about what happens when life forces you to stop long enough to notice someone standing right in front of you, and choosing, once you can move again, not to walk away. And every time I hear that familiar ding now, I don't think about being trapped. I think about the moment everything quietly changed.